morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is Policy Talks that is brought to you almost monthly by the Williamson Inc., our chamber here in Williamson County. And we just had a wonderful audience here at Columbia State this morning, live audience of quite a few folks. Many or all of them, all of you are distinguished, of course, but one or two are maybe more distinguished than others. But and we got a great panel this morning. But just want to also welcome our audience on WAKM 950, AM 950, our audience on YouTube, YouTube TV or YouTube, just YouTube, isn't it, Creed? That's it. And just want and hope everyone enjoys the discussion. Our panel this morning consists of Senator Jack Johnson. He is our senator here in the 23rd District. And 27. I looked at, it used to be 23rd, didn't it? You know, one of these days I'll get that right. But 27th District here in Williamson County, most of Williamson County. And we are proud to call him our Senate Majority Leader as well. So very important position. Next to him is Representative Jake McCallum from Eastern Williamson County, representing the 63rd District. Todd Warner down from Chapel Hill, representing the 92nd District. Representative Lee Reeves, representing the 65th District, which is south of 96 and west of the county line. And Representative Bullzo, Gino Bullzo, which sort of north of 96 in Franklin and most of Brentwood. And then Senator Joey Hensley, Dr. Hensley from Hohenwald, representing, I had the district number written down. I don't have my glasses on. I have to put it back, 28. And that's a good portion of Murray, Perry,
Giles, and Spring Hill in Williamson County.
Got all of Spring Hill here in Williamson County. So we're glad to have a full delegation with us this morning. Should be a great discussion. What I like to do on our first show of the year is look at the committee assignments. I learned in this business many years ago that the committee assignments by the Senate and House leadership determine a lot of what's going to make it through the process. And so this morning, if I can get to my notes, Jack, you are obviously the Senate Majority Leader, which means that you explain that position to us. You can do it better than I can.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning. And before we get started, I want to welcome Representative Lee Reeves, the newest member of our delegation. Great to have him on our team. I don't know if anyone has discussed the hazing process that will take place later this morning, but we'll have a conversation about that.
He's in for it.
Makes them lose their hair. So
yeah, I can attest to that. I have been elected by my Republican caucus to be the Republican leader. When you look at the Senate in terms of the leadership structure, there are really three positions. There is obviously the Speaker of the Senate, who in Tennessee also serves as the Lieutenant Governor. That's Randy McNally. We have a Speaker of the House. We have a Speaker of the Senate. He is elected by the entire body. He's nominated as a Republican by our caucus and then elected by the chamber. And then there's the Republican leader, which is the position I hold. It's the number 2 position in the Senate. One of my biggest responsibilities is being more or less the liaison between the Senate and the governor's office in terms of legislative priorities for the governor, including the budget, which is obviously the most important bill we pass every year, the only constitutionally required bill that we pass, which is our state's budget. And some people mistakenly think that means, because I'm the Republican leader, that I'm compelled to support all of the governor's initiatives, and that is not the case. It's equally my responsibility to tell the governor when there's an idea he has that I don't think is going to set well with the Senate, as it is to obviously champion the things that, and obviously the governor and I and our caucus agree the vast majority of the time. So. But that's effectively, and then in my capacity as a majority leader, I'm sure you'll probably get to this, but I serve on the Finance Committee, obviously as the sponsor of the state budget. I need to be on the Finance Committee, and then I also serve on the Commerce and Labor Committee, which I chaired for 9 years before becoming the majority leader, and I also serve on the Ethics Committee, the Capital Commission. But in terms of standing committees that will consider legislation, finance, and commerce and labor.
So given your relationship with the governor's office, I would assume you have a lot of input into that legislation that comes out of the governor's office, don't you?
Well, again, it's on behalf of my caucus. So Senator Hensley and I, we are honored to be part of a 27-member Republican caucus out of 33 members. And so, yes, we have lots of conversations, and I have lots of conversations with our members, and I report back to the governor and his staff about where our caucus feels, or how they're feeling about different legislative initiatives.
Okay. Senator Hensley, one of your probably more logical appointments is to the Health Committee in the Senate. Tell us about your committee assignments and which ones.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here today and seeing everyone here early on a Friday morning. But I serve on the Finance Committee, and I'm chairman of the Revenue Subcommittee. Our Finance Committee has 2 subcommittees. I'm chairman of the Revenue Subcommittee, which hears all of tax bills. If a bill is going to be changing the tax code, then it will come through the Revenue Subcommittee. And I also serve on the Health Committee and the Education Committee. And I also this year serve as Deputy Speaker as well. We have 2 Deputy Speakers down the line from the leadership and the caucus chairman, but honored to be able to do that.
The having a seat on the Finance Committee, you and Senator Johnson, no bills get passed without the blessing of the Finance Committee. Is that right?
That's correct. Every bill, no matter how good it is, it has to be funded in the budget. So if a bill is, every bill has a fiscal note attached to it. The fiscal review attaches a cost to every bill, and that has to be passed through the Finance Committee, and the budget has to be balanced. So yes, every bill, if it has any kind of cost to it, has to come through the Finance Committee.
Now, Senator Johnson, one of the appointments that caught my eye is the new chairman of the Education Committee for the Senate. Senator Dawn White from Murfreesboro, former school teacher. School teachers are notorious for not liking education scholarships for secondary schools. Tell us about that appointment and how that came about and why.
Well, Senator White is an outstanding senator. She served on the Education Committee for a number of years. The previous chairman of that committee, John Lundberg, was defeated in his reelection effort last year. And so it opened up that opening for chair of education. I think she had served as the first or second vice chairman for a number of years, so she was the logical person. She had the seniority. Again, she does have a background in education, and she's going to do a great job.
Okay. Moving to the House now. I usually try to do this in order of seniority, and I think Representative Bullseye, I gave you a promotion almost, but you're now the senior, Jake?
Mr. Warner, Todd Warner.
Todd, you've been around a lot. Well, my apologies. I didn't do my homework well last night, I guess.
That's perfectly okay.
Todd, tell us about your appointments and your initiatives you're planning to do this year.
My appointments, I was appointed to the state and local government and the naming and designating committees.
Any particular things you want to accomplish on those committees this year? Or are you just there to weed through all the ideas that everybody else throws at you?
Just weed through the ideas and make sure we keep government smart here in Tennessee.
Good. Now, who's next? Jake? Representative McAlvin, I should say.
Well, I would defer to Gino being my senior. No offense, Gino.
Go ahead, Gino.
Sure, Dave. Good morning, everyone. I'm on a total of 7 committees, Dave. The House just this year created a new committee called Naming and Designating, which Representative Warner is also on. And the essence of that committee is that if the state owns it, the General Assembly can name it, or if it's on the calendar, the General Assembly can designate it. So any bills that deal with naming state-owned property or designating particular days of the week, weeks of the month, months of the year will flow through our committee. And the speakers named me chairman of that committee, so we are looking forward to a nice, vigorous year of naming and designating state-owned property and on the calendar. I also serve on our education committee, which has a K through 12 subcommittee, which is where a lot of the K through 12 legislation comes through, obviously.
Right.
Also, I serve on the Judiciary Committee, which has a Children's and Families Subcommittee that I'm also serving on. We also have a Calendar and Rules Committee that I serve on, and then finally a joint Judiciary and Government Committee. So it looks to be a pretty busy year.
Like it. Now, the calendar and rules doesn't sound like that big a deal, but it can have significant influence on what things happen on the calendar, I guess. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. In the House, if a bill does not pass through calendar and rules, it doesn't get to the House floor. So it is typically the final stop for every bill that's coming through the House. So it's a very important committee.
Right. Obviously, the education, the K through 12 subcommittee are going to be very important appointments this year. Judiciary, there's that pretty much covers all the law enforcement arms of the state government, does it not? And obviously the judges and that sort of thing, which you should know a little bit about.
It does, Dave. It covers the entire criminal justice system as well as the civil justice system. All the criminal courts, all the civil courts, from the Supreme Court to the Court of Appeals to trial level courts, juvenile courts. It covers the whole gamut.
And how long have you been practicing law?
About 38 years now.
Maybe you can help us out there. Representative McCalman, Jake McCalman,
Morning, Dave.
63rd District. I'll get yours right, since that's my district. You're our only member in this delegation that's on a transportation subcommittee, which is my favorite subject. So we're going to pick on you a lot this year, but
I look forward to it.
Anything in particular that you've got your eye on, particularly in the area of transportation, that we should expect to see down the road this year?
This year, nothing in particular. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure we're passing sound policy that's going to benefit Tennesseans. And, whether it's Mountain City to Memphis, right here in Williamson County, we all need good roads to drive on. We've got potholes that need to be filled. So looking forward to seeing what comes through the committee and voting for good policy.
Hope you will push your weight around a little bit. So get us maybe a little more than our fair share here in Williamson County. We'd love that. Public Service Subcommittee, what does that cover?
So there was a consolidation of committees in the House. Last year in the 113th General Assembly, we had the State Government Committee, which had departments and agencies, public services, corrections subcommittees. I sat on corrections subcommittee. We had local government, which is its own standalone committee, and they have various subcommittees underneath that. This year, there's several committees that were consolidated, so now you have state and local government. Public services, by virtue of me sitting on corrections, that got absorbed into public services. That will be, basically, it was just consolidation committees.
So your joint Judiciary Government Committee, along with, I won't call you a senator, Mr. Bullseye, that committee will oversee anything to do with immigration, I presume. Is that right? The immigration enforcement that President Trump is talking about?
In the House, it certainly will, yes.
Okay. Any thoughts about, and I think that's part of the special session coming up that the governor is wanting to talk about. So do you see any obstacles in the House to?
Not in particular. The bill that you're referring to, Dave, was just filed on Wednesday. It's called HB 6001, and it's the governor's immigration initiative, which in broad strokes does three things. It sets up a chief immigration officer with a staff to coordinate with the federal government to enforce federal immigration laws. It also provides for funding for local governments to make sure that they cooperate through Section 287 agreements with federal authorities and making sure that the president's immigration objectives are carried out. And then third, it adopts a new regime for driver's license to make sure that it's easy to distinguish between those issued to U.S. citizens and those issued to permanent aliens or those otherwise in the country on a temporary basis.
Circle back and talk about that a little bit more. I'll let Jack talk about it a little bit too. But I want to give equal time to Lee Reeves here.
Well, by all means, these fellas can.
You're our rookie, so we'll pick on you. But
In the hazing.
and by the way, Jake is also vice chairman of the Calendar and Rules Committee, which is a very important role. So we look forward to your participation there. Representative Reeves on the Education and the K through 12 Subcommittee, two pretty important paths for this legislation that's being discussed to go through.
Well, those committees are also very busy committees. The busiest committees, I understand, are Justice and Education every single year. And I'm also on Finance and Finance Sub. You know, I used to practice as an attorney up in some big cities and worked very long hours. And I assume they just think my workload is very high, my ability to absorb lots of hours. So
Yeah.
this may be part of the hazing process.
Well, that we'll look forward to your participation in those discussions and getting a little bit more feedback from what you see coming down the road. Just want to, Jack Johnson, I want to focus on you here just for a minute. My apologies to the rest of the delegation. But since you carry the legislation, sponsor the legislation that the governor is proposing this year, and I think you've been involved in a lot of the discussions around those. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about the Immigration Act that Representative Bolzo was talking about and what the objectives are there. And what we should expect out of that legislation.
Sure. Well, let me first of all say thank you for doing a bit of a deep dive into committee assignments, because you're exactly right. What happens in the General Assembly is very, very committee centric. And the hard work that's done on crafting legislation and amending it and getting stakeholder feedback. If it's a bill that deals with local governments, we want to be talking to our mayors and our city aldermen and county commissioners and so forth. And so if you follow the General Assembly, when legislation gets to a final floor vote, either in the House or the Senate, most often it's fully decided or it's baked, and so many things we pass unanimously or overwhelmingly, and that's because of all the work that's done in committees. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And as you can tell, we have a very broad, diverse cross-section of various aspects of government. So back to the special session, the governor had indicated that he was going to call a special session to address school choice and also hurricane disaster relief, something we haven't touched on yet, but something that is very important. We utilize special sessions to take up things that are time sensitive and important. People understandably might wonder, well, you're in session anyway. We would reconvene on Monday. Why are you going into special session and not just regular session? And the reason is because when you go into special session, the governor issues a call. That's what we call it, the call for the special session. And he is very specific about what can be contemplated during that special session. So we go into a 1 week or a 2 week, whatever it ends up being, special session. We can only talk about those very specific things that are in the call. So we can address those, get them done if they're time sensitive, and then we can move on to our regular session and address all the other issues. So hurricane disaster relief, which we can talk about, very important for Upper East Tennessee in the wake of Hurricane Helene. Obviously, the Education Freedom Scholarship, that's time sensitive, need to get it passed so the department has time to get everything in place so those can be utilized by families starting in the fall. The addition of the illegal immigration was somewhat of a last minute addition. And it stemmed from conversations between the governor and if you don't know, our governor, Bill Lee, is chair of the Republican Governors Association. So he talks to a lot of governors frequently, and they talk a lot anyway, and he's good friends with a lot of other governors. And some of those conversations, including conversations with President Trump and his administration about the importance of the illegal immigration efforts, which we've all heard about, the president talking about, it's been all over the news, and wanting to make sure states are in a key position to be able to cooperate with the Trump administration and getting the worst of the worst out of our communities, those who are in the country illegally and have committed heinous crimes, cartel members, gang members, things of that nature. And so it was a fairly quick conversation, but there were some things we were talking about doing in regular session that the governor thought we should go ahead and include in this special session to make sure these pieces of the puzzle are in place so that Tennessee can fully cooperate with the Trump administration. That's kind of the background. Representative Bulso did a great job of articulating the items that are in there. Chief Immigration Enforcement Officer that will act as a conduit between our local law enforcement and ICE. If you've turned on a TV, you've probably seen a gentleman named Tom Homan on TV, on any cable news show. He is the incoming border czar for President Trump. And we just wanted to make sure we sent a very clear message to President Trump and the people of Tennessee that we are going to fully cooperate with his efforts to get especially these most violent illegal aliens out of our communities. So that's how we ended up including that, and there's broad support for the legislation. Had a great conversation with Sheriff Hughes last night. Obviously, we're going to be talking to our local law enforcement officials about what's best for them.
Let me circle back to Representative Bulso again. You mentioned, and I should have written this authority down, 237, 287.
287.
287 B or anyway, G, excuse me, I'll get it. But I had a conversation with Commissioner Long yesterday just to kind of get a little background on this. And he happened to mention that there are only 2 law enforcement agencies in the state of Tennessee that have that 287G authority, which, as I understand it, gives that law enforcement agency the authority to question somebody about their immigration status. Is that accurate?
I'd have to defer to Commissioner Long. I couldn't tell you how many agencies we have across the state.
Just
that have-
2, Greene County and the city of Greenville.
Okay, I won't contest that.
But what authority does that involve? Are y'all familiar with it yet? Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, well, to a degree, and let me posit this theory that part of the reason that there aren't many local governments participating in the program is because there is no participation at the federal level. In other words, there's no need to have a program such as this when you have a dysfunctional immigration custom enforcement agency at the federal level that is making no effort to remove these people from our communities and our states. And that's what we've had for the last 4 years. So the dynamics are changing, which is why we included this in the legislation. You're correct, and we'll have to defer to other experts about the very concrete specifics of the program, but it is a program that local jails specifically, our jails are run by our sheriffs in all 95 counties, can enter into to where they partner with the federal government for detention and removal of these people. So when law enforcement encounters someone who's committed a crime, they detain them, they have reason to believe that they're in the country illegally, there is a process that you go through that should ultimately result in immigration and custom enforcement coming to that community, taking possession of that prisoner and taking them to an ICE facility. That hasn't been done for the last 4 years, or it's been done very rarely. So part of the calculus here is knowing that beginning on January 20th at 12 noon, that we actually have a functional White House and a functional federal government in this capacity, that those dynamics may change. So we want to make sure those resources are available. We're going to set aside, we're using a number of $5 million right now to provide grants to local law enforcement in the event that there are expenses that may be incurred by them to get a 287G program up and running. And so we included it in the call. We'll be having lots of conversations with our local law enforcement officers next week and other stakeholders, Department of Safety with Commissioner Long, to figure out the tools that we need just to, again, make sure that we are fully cooperating with their efforts to get these people out of our communities.
In the interest of time, I'd love to spend more time on that subject, but we've got a lot of stuff to cover this morning. Hurricane Helene relief, what specifically is in the plans for that? Jack, you're the one I'm looking at.
Okay. Yeah. So as you know, Upper East Tennessee was terribly devastated. I visited up there with the governor, toured. The magnitude of the damage was unimaginable. Many of us in this room went through the 2010 flood. I did. I had a business that was flooded. I mean, it was bad. Your home flooded. But I mean, literally had interstate highways are gone. I mean, the school buildings gone, homes gone. And so we've already done a lot through TDOT. Has been up there working 24 hours a day, getting roads open. They really did some miraculous things in getting, is it I-40 that had been washed out, and getting a lane open there so you could at least get traffic through. So TDOT's been very busy. Governor Lee was able administratively back late last year to implement what they called the HEAL program. We set aside $100 million using some TennCare reserve money, which we're allowed to do per CMS rules, to provide a revolving loan fund for some of these communities. But here's the issue. FEMA will reimburse the expenses for a lot of this rebuilding. But for a lot of those programs, it's a 75-25 split. And the way that typically works is the federal government will provide 75%, the state kicks in 12.5%, and then the local government kicks in 12.5%. Problem is, these counties, many of them that were hit the hardest in Upper East Tennessee, are among our most economically distressed counties. And they can't swing the 12.5%. And so what we're doing is, for these counties that were affected that are under the emergency declaration, the state's going to kick in 20, and the local government can do 5. And then we're also going to cover the interest cost in the event that they need to borrow money even to meet that 5% match. We're going to pay the interest, or we're proposing to pay the interest on those bonds or loans that they have to take out for 3 years. So there will be an interest just to try to help facilitate some of these. We had a high school up there that was devastated. We're going to rebuild it. That's $20 million. So those are the high levels of some of the things that we're going to do. One thing that we are going to do into perpetuity that I think is a really, really good idea is, we have these disasters, right? We have tornadoes, we have floods, we have things like this that happen virtually every year in some part of our state. And Governor Lee has noticed that when these happen, we want to help people, we want to help these communities rebuild, but we're always scrambling to find money here, or do this or do that. We need to have something on a more permanent basis. So the governor's proposing a $100 million recovery fund that will exist on an ongoing basis. We're going to put $100 million in there so that when these disasters happen, and unfortunately they do, that there will be a go-to place where the administration will be authorized to use money to help these communities rebuild.
I want to call that the other rainy day fund. So since you've already got one of those. Gentlemen, anything else to add to that subject that you all have a interest in? Obviously, the one that the media is most interested in, and many of our guests and constituents is the Education Freedom Act. And again, in the interest of time, Jack, if we could run through some of the details of this bill that the governor has proposed, and just kind of help us understand the bill. 20,000 scholarships, $7,000 per. 10,000 with income limits, which I thought were somewhat interesting. You have to make, you can't make more than $173,000 a year. Is that accurate?
For a family of 4, yeah, and that's 3 times the federal rate for free and reduced lunch.
That's going to open the door pretty wide. And then there are 10,000 with no income limits. so that's 20,000. You've got the bill that's already in place that's giving scholarships. How many scholarships are being given out under the previous bill?
The education scholarship bill that we passed, our savings account, ESA bill that we passed in 2019
Right.
is capped at 7,500, but those are limited at the present time to Davidson, Shelby, and Hamilton counties. So that is a different separate program that continues to exist. It's been very successful. Families are being helped with that. This will be in addition to that.
Are all 7,500 of those scholarships being utilized?
I think we're up to about 4,000, but it's only been in full effect for 1 year. There was litigation pending, and so the program was enjoined, sadly, for a couple of years. It's been in a full effect for 1 full school year.
As I understand it, the proposed bill allows for 5,000 additional scholarships per year, as long as 75% or more of the previously existing scholarships are being utilized. So does that make it pretty much an open-ended?
No.
Okay.
There is a mechanism in the legislation that when it reaches 75% of capacity, so that'd be 15,000 scholarships, that it will grow by 5,000 per year. But we have a fundamental constitutional principle in Tennessee that I think is very, very important and powerful, and that is you cannot bind a future General Assembly. And so any growth in the program is subject to appropriation.
Okay.
And so there is nothing budgeted. The budget does not automatically grow unless the General Assembly approves that. And so that's misinformation out there that this is open-ended in some regard and can grow without any restriction. That's simply not true.
It's very complicated. I read it about 3 times yesterday, and I still wasn't quite sure about some of the details. But but it is, as I understand it, it's got to be used for tuition fees, transportation, school materials. It can't just be used for whatever mom and dad want to do if they want to homeschool. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, and similar to the savings account, education savings account legislation we have now, it's administered by the department. The money goes directly to the private school. It doesn't go in the parent's pocket to where they can go spend it on something else. So there are very important safeguards in there to make sure the money is being used as intended by the General Assembly.
Okay, these students, as I understand, again, have annual testing requirements. The schools, now, if they're going to a private school that is not doing annual testing, these kids are the only ones in that school that will get the testing. Is that the way that works?
No. The scholarships are only available to Category 1, 2, or 3 schools, and all of those schools already administer some type of nationally recognized assessment. So Category 4 and 5 schools are not eligible to receive the scholarships. So we're not changing anything about those schools. It's limited to those Category 1, 2, and 3 schools, and they're already either administering the TCAP. I asked the department for this information. I think there's 130 some odd private schools now that administer the TCAP as a form of assessment. Other private schools use some other type of nationally recognized norm referenced test is the term they use in education parlance.
So now, are there any consequences if those tests don't show good results? I mean, we've got various levels of public school, failing schools, we call them. Is that going to be a thing with the private schools?
We want to collect the data. We do, and we're doing that now with the ESA, but with the education savings account legislation that we have in effect for those 3 counties. But what's most important to me is what matters to the parents. And I want to be very clear about making sure that we understand the motive for this. This legislation is to empower parents. It's not to turn private schools into public schools. Parents should be able to pick the education alternatives for their child that they think are best for their child. And the ESA program, which again has been in effect for about 1.5 years now, I guess it's approaching 2 years because it was delayed. but the parental satisfaction rate of people using the ESA program now in those 3 counties is 99% are satisfied or very satisfied. That's the metric that's important. We should empower parents to make education decisions for their kids, not try to turn public schools into private schools. But we will, all of the schools that can receive the scholarship will do some type of assessment, as I said, and we will get the data on that, and we'll be able to monitor it.
Real quickly, a couple other things that I know our chamber was concerned about is open enrollment across county lines. I understand that's not in there anymore. Is that accurate?
That is correct. We have some districts in the state that allow for district-to-district open enrollment. Interestingly, Williamson County did, or maybe still does, for teachers that work in Williamson County. They can register their kids in. If you buy a house in Williamson County, again, this may have changed, but I know at one point, if you buy a house in Williamson County or you're building a house, you can enroll your kids in Williamson County schools when you demonstrate that you're going to be moving into the county, but you have to pay out-of-zone tuition. We have rural districts across Tennessee that have capacity. They want additional kids, and so they open enrollment up for their district for kids that don't necessarily live in the county, and they don't have to, but they can charge tuition, out-of-zone tuition. So, but this scholarship has nothing to do with that. There are some who would like to allow the scholarship to be utilized to pay that out-of-zone tuition if it's a public-to-public enrollment. That's not included now, but we may have that conversation. I've had a couple of members bring that up to me previously. But no, there will be no forced open enrollment on any district.
Time already. The one other very significant concern that the chamber had is the hold harmless provision that assures, well, one thing that I haven't even mentioned is the $2,000 bonus to the teachers. That's all teachers across the state. I understand it's fully funded by the state. It's not one of these share programs where they get a raise, but the county has to come up with part of it. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. That would all be funded by the state, $2,000 for every public school teacher in the state.
And the hold harmless provision that apparently guarantees every school system that they will not receive less money if they have kids leaving the school system to go to private or homeschooling situations. Is anybody?
That's correct. If they lose enrollment because of this voucher bill, they would be guaranteed not to have a less budget than they had the previous year. Yes.
So using a hypothetical, let's say the school system loses 10% of their students to scholarship students. But inflation keeps going up and their expenses keep going up. They're locked into what they got on their high watermark year. Is that how it works, or do we know how that works in detail yet?
We do, Dave, and there's an important distinction to draw because there are some differences on this provision, this disenrollment provision between HB1 and SB1 and what now has been filed in the special session as SB1 and HB 6004. And disenrollment is a defined term in the bill, and it does not restrict disenrollment to scholarship recipients who leave. Disenrollment occurs when the enrollment of non-virtual students decreases from one year to the next. So it's not just a term that defines when scholarship recipients leave. So if, for example, you had 100 students in a school one year, and that you have 10 scholarship recipients that leave and go to private school, if the next year the school now has 90 students, then in that circumstance, they will be funded through TISA at that same 100-student level. They'll get the 90 that they have plus the 10 that they left. Now, if on the other hand you have 10 scholarship recipients leave, but 10 new students come in, then they're still at the same level that they were before for TISA funding. There has not been disenrollment as that term is defined in the Act, so there would be no double counting or double payment for students.
Okay. A lot of little detail, devils in the details, right?
It is, and it's important because some folks are in favor of or opposed to parental choice just as a principle, and then some are opposed to the governor's bill based on specifically what it says. But in general, what the bill does is exactly what Senator Johnson was saying. It creates this new program where you've got 20,000 scholarships available for the first year. And depending on how many of those are subscribed, then you have the ability under this law to add another 5,000. And when you consider that we've got 1 million approximately students in public schools and something less than 100,000 in private schools across the state, it'll take a while for this program really to have a material effect, economically or otherwise, across the state. So I think when folks actually look at the bill and you consider that we've got, from the state side, about a $7 billion budget for 1 million students, just look at it in proportion. This is $140 million, $7,000 a scholarship for 20,000 scholarships. And we're going to have a chance to see how it works across the state. As Jack was saying, it's already in play in part in Shelby County, Davidson County, and Hamilton County, and the parents love it, 99%.
The Tennessean says this may cost as much as $400 million. Gentlemen on the finance committees want to speak to that?
But yes, in the first year it will, but that's counting the $2,000 bonus for the teachers. That's about $180 million, about $144 million for the scholarships themselves, if they're all used, and then the hold harmless clause. So that total for the first year, if all the scholarships are used, would be around $400 million. But that $2,000 bonus for the teachers is just one time, so it's just the first year would be for the teachers.
About, well, I thought about two things and I forgot both of them. So we'll circle back, but the lot of discussion going to be going on. Any other details? Todd, in our delegation, I'm going to give you equal time here just a minute. You wrote a letter to the editor at the Tennessean saying you weren't in favor of this. Just be nice, but here.
Yeah, Dave, again, I'm not a fan of it. I believe that we ought to do everything we can at our public school level to get things right there. The $2,000, and we talk about the hold harmless. Well, we're double funding education in the state's what we're doing. We're taking those students that are leaving public schools, and we're going to continue to pay for their education in private schools. Number one. The second thing that concerns me about this bill, and the reason I wrote the letter, the editorial or whatnot, is President Trump has promised us that he's going to do something about the Department of Education. I asked Governor Lee to hold back a little bit. Let's wait. Let's see what President Trump does, and let's see if he does something at the federal level. If he offers a income tax deduction for sending your kids to private school, if he does that, and we put in place what's about to happen, which I don't think should be done under a special session. I think you, the citizens, have the right to vet these bills, watch them go through the proper process, and get time to comment on these bills, and not go down there when we rush things through, when we suspend the rules, when we go into flow motion. I think that's wrong. But what I do, Dave's telling me to hurry up here. I'm getting on a kick. But what I do think it could happen here is the taxpayers could actually be funding education in this state 3 times through these lot of scholarships if President Trump does something at the federal level. And I think we just should give it some time. The special session. Let me say this, and I'll shut up. The special session should be about East Tennessee, and it should have happened 3 months ago. It shouldn't be happening right now. We should have given 2 weeks for assessment time, and the governor should have called us in. And that's my thoughts there.
Points well taken. We appreciate your sharing that with us. We're going to have a few minutes. If we've got anybody out here that would like to ask a question or two about it, I see a couple of hands. And lady here is the first hand I saw, and so gentleman on the back row is the next. stand up and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Dorinda Smith. I am with the League of Women Voters. And one question I have for you is help me understand the 10,000 scholarships that are going to be paid notwithstanding income, establishing a certain income. I struggle when I think about some of those scholarships personally going to people who make way more money than I ever did, and I retired as a CEO. So I'd really like for you to help me understand why we're giving 10,000 scholarships to people irrespective of income.
Well, I'm happy to address that. So the Tennessee Constitution compels us to provide an education for every child in the state of Tennessee. We're already spending $7,000 average statewide to educate every child that's in public schools right now. I fully support this program being universal. And if it's universal, then it's available to all families, because every child in the state is entitled to that $7,000 that we appropriate in the General Assembly to educate them. But the government should not tell you where you send your kid to school. The parents should decide where you send your kid to school. So we're already appropriating $7,075 is the statewide average to educate every kid in the state of Tennessee. Some people already make the decision to go to a private school. The other problem I have about income and restrictions is it's very hard to apply. It's a very common theme when you hear from liberal Democrats talk about people should pay their fair share in taxes. What does that mean? Because if you're a family of 4 living in Nashville and you have 2 kids, it's a far different expense than you might have if you live in rural West Tennessee. And so you don't know the individual family circumstances. So the governor proposed, and I support, having half of these scholarships available with some type of an income cap, and we discussed what that is. But after that, in the first year, the other half are universally eligible across the state. And after that, all the scholarships will be available to any family. So if you don't think we should be appropriating $7,000 per kid, well, you need to amend the state constitution, because we're already compelled to provide an education to every kid in the state. Oh, thank you. And by the way, we do this with college age kids as well, with the Hope Scholarship Program, which has been in effect for over 20 years now. And it is universally applicable. Any family in the state is eligible to apply for that. There's no income restriction or income limit. If you're making $100,000 a year and you got 5 kids, that's a whole lot different than someone with 1 kid making $100,000, and depending on where you live in the state. So scholarships should be available to every family. They can apply. The very wealthy probably won't apply. They probably won't utilize it because they're not going to want to go through the hassle of applying for it. But there will be some, and so it should be available to everyone.
Good morning. I appreciate you guys putting a lot of brain power into the positions you have and keeping us safe and making our lives better. But my name is David Zoff, and I live just off of Sunset near Nolensville. Hailstorm came through, trashed all of our roofs. I got a new roof. A lot of the guys that came out there probably were illegal aliens to fix my roof, but I appreciate the fact that they were there and they did a good job. Just like every culture, every race has good and not so good, I think the culture of what we would call Mexicans coming over to do work, there are some bad ones, like Trump says, some bad amigos, but that's fine to get them out. I think I'd love to hear somebody poke holes in the fact that, let's say we get the border controlled and we let as many people in as we want who want that job to do roofs, to do landscaping. Here in Middle Tennessee, we appreciate those guys, the good hard workers. But why don't we just say we get an iris scan, we get a DNA scan, we get a fingerprint, and like you said, as soon as they do anything beyond a traffic stop, they get exported. Where they go, I don't know. But it seems like it'd be easy to do that. Easy and simple, cost-effective, to keep the bad people out, but let the good people in that are doing the things that we need to have done, working in the restaurants, working in the hotels, stuff we need to have done. Anybody poke a hole in that?
It's a federal issue, but gentlemen, you want to tackle it?
Yeah, David, I'll take a stab at it because I think what you're articulating is what most people feel, that we need to have our laws obeyed, but we love and need a lot of these people who have come into the country without actually following the laws. So what do? I mean, we are a nation of immigrants, but we're a nation of laws first. And so we absolutely have to make sure our laws are enforced, because if we don't, that leads for a certain disdain for the law that we really cannot tolerate as a society. But at the same time that we're undertaking enforcement of the laws and deporting those who are here illegally, we need massively to change our immigration laws because it's too complicated, it's too expensive to get into the country under our current immigration system. Our asylum laws are frankly not very good. I'm probably one of the few folks up here who have actually been involved in asylum litigation before the Court of Immigration Appeals in the Sixth Circuit. And it's very difficult to qualify for asylum under our current structure. We need to reform that. And then obviously we need to take a look at what we're doing with regard to work permits for folks that we need in the country coming here on a temporary basis. So believe me, what you're articulating is something that we all feel. But right now what we need to do is we need to get the criminals out, we need to have our laws enforced, and then have an orderly system of immigration.
Next question. Introduce yourself.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Jeff Constantine. I have two questions. The Hope Scholarship requires college students to meet the requirements on GPA in order to keep that scholarship. This new program, the voucher program, all it requires is you take a test, your parents are happy, and they can keep that from the 3 through the 11th grade without any requirements upon performance on that student. That's, to me, one real fallacy here. And the second one is that the pilot originally was for public students that had been in public schools for at least a year. Does this new one have the same requirement, or can a private student apply for this ESA? Thank you.
You're correct that the Hope Scholarship does have that requirement that you have to maintain a certain GPA, and this doesn't have any requirement like that. You're correct about that. But this program does allow any student that is qualified for a public school, which includes a student being homeschooled, or a student already in a private school, or a student already in a public school. All of those students can qualify for this. But you have to go to a private school. Someone homeschooled cannot qualify for it and continue being homeschooled, but they can qualify for the program. Any of those students can.
I remembered the question I wanted to ask a few minutes ago, and since we haven't picked on you, Representative Reeves.
I was going to get out of it. Okay.
Nope. Specifically, how does this affect the Williamson County school systems?
Well, I don't think it affects Williamson County much at all. I mean, we've got some of the best schools in the state. I think everybody here acknowledges that. That said, I think we do have individual students and families that prefer something different for their child. I know a single mother in my neighborhood had a child who was being bullied at school. And she was ultimately able to place that child in a private school, and he is thriving there. So even in the very best schools, it's not a fit for every student. And I think parents need the ability to choose the best situation for their individual child. And as we know, children within families are very different from other children within families. I certainly have that dynamic in my own family. We've got my oldest daughter's a little, well, I better not say this is public, but she I think fits better in some situations than in other situations. And I think we really need to give parents that decision versus a top-down, big brother, big government approach to that. And so I do support that. Williamson County, I think, is going to continue to thrive with our great schools. We've certainly done very well through the years, and we will continue to do well.
Jake McCallum, we haven't picked on you, but I'm going to get even next month. So we're going to talk about transportation.
Always a pleasure, Dave.
The chamber recently did a survey of about 1,100 of their members. And so I think, gentlemen, you've got some work to do, because the question was asked, how do you think the implementation of proposed legislation around universal school choice would impact the quality and the accessibility of education in Williamson County's public schools? The answers were 2-1 against that being positive for our public schools. And the other question, how do you think the implementation of the proposed legislation would impact the quality? It's almost the same question. It is the same question. There is another question somewhere in the stack. But the point being that there is work to do to convince your constituents that this is the positive thing for our schools. And of course, schools are very important to the business community here. And that is well known, and we want to make sure we take care of them. We've got another guest here that I want to pick on a little bit. Stand up and introduce yourself, sir.
Good morning, Rogers Anderson.
Our county mayor, just in case you didn't know. You've got some legislation that is it the Mayor's Association, or what is the organization that is proposing a change to our transfer tax? Explain what's going on and who's behind it and so forth.
Well, it's an effort on behalf of all, as you can see by the slide, that the chamber has graciously pushed out to the community. I was asking Kel just before you began the show, we've got over 10,000 people now that have signed on to this thought and process. And it's been a 2 or 3 year, all of the city mayors have signed off on it, looking at TDOT funding. And the requirement that TDOT now is putting back on the locals of helping to pay for that individual project. It's not your city roads or your county roads, it's a TDOT project.
What's a transfer tax?
Transfer tax is that every single one of us, when we move into Williamson County, or we move from house to house, there's 37 cents a hundred that goes back to the state on the value of that home. The support that we're seeing is to take that real estate transfer tax, ask for 50% of it come back to the local level. That would not affect the city's projects. Our own county commission voted unanimously. Several of the cities have taken their former resolutions supporting this, and many other counties across the state. That money that comes back to the counties is an opportunity for each county, all 95 counties, to be able to utilize that money in such a way that it would benefit their community, whether it was natural disasters or whatever issue they feel that's needed in their community. For us here in Williamson County, I've actually indicated that if this money should come back, we'll allocate 40% of that money back to federally programs like I-65, and that's the emphasis on this. So we all know across this state, Dave, I know you're in a hurry, we all know across this state that roads present prosperity to your business community as well as many others. So this is a strong effort that we can get that message out and get our legislation and all legislators across the state to support something like this.
Now, just one quick question though. A lot of the legislation in the state legislature is clearly defined by urban counties versus, or urban legislators versus rurals. Are you getting any support from the rurals?
Oh, absolutely. We're not dictating. If that money should come back into the county coffers, it could certainly be used for schools. You need a master plan. You need to know how you're going to spend that money. If I was any of these 6 men, I would say, how are you planning on spending that money? It's not just free. It's not Christmas money. It's not just hanging on the trees. That you, Jack, and the whole group should say, how do you plan on utilizing that money? And I assure you, our county commissioners have got some ways they can spend it. Before you leave, one question, Doc. Under the
We don't have time for another question.
$2,000, is that going to be the money that's coming back for teachers, is that going to be the ability to pay formula since it's under Tischler?
Yes, it'll be paid for by the state. Is that what you asked?
Question was, all money that comes back in counties for schools paid under the Tischler formula, Williamson County doesn't get about 30.
Mayor, my understanding is it does not affect the TISA formula.
The direct appropriation, yeah, outside the formula.
Sorry to wrap this up with so many questions on the tips of everyone's tongue, but we're out of time. I just want to acknowledge the people that make this happen every time we do it. Love coming to Columbia State, Dr. Lampley, who has now announced his retirement coming up. He's going to go back and farm instead of being here for us every time. We appreciate the welcome you've given us over the years, Dr. Lampley, and just beautiful. Beautiful facility. Appreciate you leaving Mary Beth here to help kind of take care of some of the logistics. WCTV, Creed Henderson and his crew always make us look good on TV. Tom and the WAKM crew certainly get us out to a lot more people in the county. And Derby Jones, we appreciate your helping us get the word out through the Williamson Herald. You and Cassie do a great job there. Our sponsors for 2025 here, little financial help to pay the expenses. AT&T is Laurie Deathridge here today. We've got a new appointment to their delegation here. And instead of Vanderbilt University School, it's going to be the Vanderbilt University Medical Center this year. And Brady Cannon is our contact there. Brady, stand up and wave. We appreciate your helping us out there. Obviously, this would not happen without the chamber staff and a whole huge effort there. Kel McDowell's the quarterback on this effort, and kind of make sure we got it all together. We're over time, Kel, but do you want to say something about the Day on the Hill? We'll get that word out through email. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I hope you had an informative day. Thank you.